everybody, it is the Relaxing Shadow here. I've been drinking wine for about 2 years now, and I have been blown away by the history of wine, how wine is made, the different kinds of flavors. It's been extremely exciting and quite the adventure, and I've been egging on a lot of people to get into wine themselves, or who have already been drinking wine, to be able to really open their eyes and their mind into a whole new world and a way to enjoy wine. So most people, when they get a bottle of wine, they'll pour it into a whatever glass they have on hand and just drink from there without really thinking about too many other things. They might smell the wine and they might taste the wine, but they're not really getting to know the wine. And that's totally fine, for the vast majority of people. I'm gonna do that from time to time too. If I have a bottle of Barefoot lying around, I'm probably not gonna really try and get to know that bottle of wine. But I have a bottle here of Hess Select Cabernet Sauvignon that I have been wanting to try for almost a year now. I've had this bottle in my wine fridge for months. I'm super excited to give this a try. I know nothing of it. I'm not reading the back label that I have here. I haven't looked anything up online. It's been in my wine fridge. I know next to nothing other than it really excited me when I saw the bottle. And so when I came on sale, I had to snag it up. I figured it would be a great opportunity, since it's a nice day, to come out here and start drinking wine. At like 11 noon. Oof. You know, when it's wine though, it's sophisticated, you know. Not an alcoholic, you're smart, you're a thinker. Yeah. So what do I mean by getting to know your bottle of wine? I mean trying to do everything that you can to really be able to taste what the winemaker was intending the wine to taste like, to be able to savor it and enjoy it. If you're like me, I tend to stick around the $15 to $25 range, maybe sometimes around the $10 range, depending upon a sale. That's where my wallet's really happy. For me, that is about an hour's work. You know, that's an hour's wage. So for me, that is a good deal. So one thing that people really don't do a whole lot of is storing the wine properly and making sure to serve it at the correct temperature. Now, this is a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon that I've had in the wine fridge for a while. I set my wine fridge pretty chilled. A normal wine fridge should probably be around cellar temperature, around 55, 56 degrees Fahrenheit. I have mine set to around 47 degrees Fahrenheit because it's really hot, and so at peak day around this time, my wine fridge is gonna be sitting around 54 degrees Fahrenheit, really trying to keep things down. So for the most part, it stays pretty chilled. But that also helps because I have a variety of wines. I like to have a white and sometimes a red, and sometimes I'll even stick some of my crafty Blue Moon in there because, you know, why not? So red wine tends to be served at pretty much a room temperature around that 55 degree Fahrenheit range. So this has been sitting in there for a while. I've had this open for about 10-15 minutes. By the time we get to pouring, it'll probably be around the 30-minute range, and we'll get into why. But serving wine at the correct temperature is good. You don't want a super chilled red wine. It's gonna mute a lot of those really nice fruit forward flavors. But a white wine that is gonna be really overpowering at room temperature is always gonna wanna be served chilled. And that's why white wine tends to appeal towards people that wanna drink either during lunch or during the day, or, you know, on summer days. Whereas reds are always for a dinner occasion or late in the evening, you know, when it's time to settle down and relax. And that is why I prefer a nice red Cabernet Sauvignon. And along with serving at the correct temperatures and stuff to really be able to experience wine good, a wine glass is important. I'm not going to tell you to go out and spend $40 on some sort of titanium reinforced crystal glassware. I got 4 of these for $10. They're cheap. But a wine glass is important for a couple of reasons. One, I prefer not to have to touch my glass too much, and I like the stem, and that helps to be able to swirl the wine around. Why would you want to be able to swirl the wine around? Well, it's the same reason you want to let your wine breathe. Oxygen changes wine over time. That's also why if you open a bottle of wine, there's a time limit on how long that wine is going to be okay, because oxygen is going to, think of it as the flavor goes up, 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 and then it hits a certain point, stays around there, and then drops straight down to what is essentially going to be vinegar. And most people even use wine that is turned at that point for cooking. Good way of not wasting a precious bottle of wine. So when you put a wine into a wine glass like this, and you see people swirled around, it's not because they're trying to act posh or rich and fancy, although it does make me feel rich and fancy. It is actually because we're introducing oxygen to the wine and really bringing out some of those flavors. And the wine glass is specifically designed to house a lot of that aroma. Our sense of taste comes a lot from our sense of smell. So when we go to take a sip, that glassware is going to funnel all of that right into your nose. That's why you'll see different ranges of glassware. White wines like glasses specifically like this, maybe even a little smaller, that really funnel it really well, whereas reds will kind of funnel it to a little wider, and sometimes even a little wider than this. But you're looking for something a nice tulip shape. If you drink wine every day, investing in some cheap wineware like this is going to really, really help bring out a lot of flavors that you might not be able to pick up. And that goes for even the cheap bottles of Barefoot Cabernet Sauvignon. So let's go ahead and pour ourselves a glass and get a live tasting demonstration about how I like to get to know my wine before I really start drinking it. I've had this aerating for about 30 minutes, so not really typically as long. If you have a decanter or want to invest in a decanter, it's going to decant the wine a lot quicker and better, but they look pretty intimidating, and I don't have the time to clean some of those things or even the willpower. So let's go ahead and pour ourselves a nice simple glass here. So the first thing that I like to do before I even get into anything else is I like to look at the wine's color. Learning about the different colors of wine can really help. You can tell a lot about a wine from the color, if it's been aged in oak, how long it's been aged, and probably even the grape variety itself. I'm not smart enough to really do that, but I do like to still look at my wine anyway, because I figure over time I'm going to start picking things up. And right now this one has a nice light red hue on it. Very, very nice. And I can already smell the wine, so I'm really excited for this. And then we're going to get a little sniff, and we're going to try and pick out the notes. All right, so right off the bat, I'm getting some nice ripe cherries, maybe a little bit of plum, just some nice red fruits. Very pleasant. So when I was just starting out tasting wine, getting to know my bottle of wine was very difficult. It smelled like wine, it tasted like wine. There wasn't anything I could describe to that. And it was very difficult to be able to pick out the notes. Now, when someone says that they smell things like that, that is kind of a given. You can really train your brain to be able to pick those things out over time, and that's the easiest way. But when it comes to tasting, that's another thing entirely. And so most people will completely ignore the cherry or the strawberry taste and really specifically look into the mouthfeel, the tannins, the structure, the minerality, stuff like that. But when it comes to smelling the wine, a thing to note that really helped me is that whatever you smell is what you smell. You are not wrong. Sense of smell and sense of taste, these things are very subjective. So if I smelled this and told you that there was a hint of vanilla on there, that's what I smell. And whether or not that there actually is or not, whether or not this was actually aged in an oak barrel, which would be a sign of a vanilla note, doesn't really matter. What you smell is what you smell. So if somebody picks up a wine and they say, that smells like wet stone, that might seem a little bit weird, but to them, that's what they smell. And just being able to do that, and no matter what it is that you smell, anything that you can associate with that given note that you are smelling can really help you dial in and really pick apart a wine. And I really like to do that before I even taste a wine. I want to start getting to know a little bit about this wine before I even put it in my mouth. Because once I start drinking the wine, I'm a couple sips into it, I'm going to be feeling really great, and all of this is going to go completely out the window. So I like to get to know the wine beforehand. So let's go ahead and go for a taste. So I like to get a good sniff beforehand, get those notes one more time, and then we'll go ahead and taste the wine. Ooh, that's really good. It's got some tannin to it, very tart right there on the ending finish. Right after I said that was really good, my cheeks were definitely getting the moisture sucked out. decent finish, still going. That is a really, really good bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. I really, really like that. I'm glad I've finally tasted this. So off the bat, I got cherry. I got a little bit of strawberry, some blackberry and plum, and it was just all around pleasant wine. So if you'd noticed, I kind of took a little bit bigger of a sip than you normally would, and I swished it around, put some more air in my mouth. And that is because you really want your first sip to be a great way of really getting to know that wine. And you don't have to do that on every sip after that. I'll occasionally still do that here and there when I really want to try and pick apart a wine, but that's simply what I like to do. Now, in the beginning, I had a very difficult time, as I said, picking apart a wine. It just smelled and tasted like wine, and that was all I could do to describe it. A thing that really helped me was knowing that what I smell and what I taste is what I smell and what I taste. So when you pick up a bottle of wine and you really are trying to get to know that wine, close your eyes and really try and pick things out. After a while, after a couple of months, I can quickly, I can smell blackberry, plum, and cherry. I've been tasting a lot of Cabernet Sauvignons around this price point, and they all pretty much have that. I can get those notes and push those aside and really hunt for the other smaller notes, like maybe a little bit of baking spice or a little bit of vanilla, you know, maybe even a little woodsy character. And you can really pick apart a wine. And this is a great way of being able to just enjoy a wine, and it's going to make your wine feel that much more worth the price point. When you spend a lot of money on wine, you're spending the money on the winemaker's time and effort going into making the wine. Around these price points, you're going to find wines that have added sugar. They're going to have oak essence or oak chips put into it to fake the fact that they've been aged. And they're pretty much going to kind of lie to you and sell you a product that is just not faithful to wine and winemaking. And this very well could be one of those. I'm probably not able to exactly tell. I've gone to some wineries and tasted wine that tastes nothing like any of the others in that variety that I've had, and it's really opened my eyes to wine and winemaking. And a thing to note though is that if you enjoy a wine, you enjoy the wine. If you like a 2-buck chuck, you like a barefoot, or you like a boxed wine, more power to you. Always try and find, the good in some of that. But I really like these types of wines because I get a lot more flavor and a lot more notes, and it's a little more fun for me, and I can save it for a nice special occasion. Let's go ahead and taste this wine one more time. That is absolutely beautiful. Now, finding the right bottle of wine can be a bit of a tricky thing. Just like tasting wine for the first time can be pretty overwhelming, just shopping for wine is extremely overwhelming. When I started out, I had no clue what I was looking for or what was a good bottle of wine, what it would even taste like, or really anything at all. I was just picking something up because it was expensive, and that was a terrible way of going. I had some wines that I just really didn't enjoy, and it really took me out of the wine experience for a while until I could finally get back into it. So starting out, you want to look for a couple of different things. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out what you are in the mood for. Are you in the mood for a white, or are you in for a red? Now, a red is going to have pretty bold red dark fruits. It's probably going to have a slight vanilla-y or maybe even a spice, some tobacco or notes or something, depending upon if it's been aged in oak or not. This is going to go really great with like steak dinners and stuff. And then the white, on the other hand, is going to be a little bit more floral, sometimes even earthy. Sometimes even I would describe it as like a stony, some minerality there. Some of them are very sweet, and they're going to be a little more crisper. You're going to be thinking about things like apples, pears, peaches. I've had some that even have notes of watermelon. So decide from there where you want to go, and then from there, it's going to be around your budget. If you're just starting out with wine, there is no reason why you should be turned away from something around the $5 range. Now, at this price point, it's going to be extremely difficult to find a bottle of wine that is pretty faithful to what you should be tasting, and you could very quickly fall into a trap where you think wine is supposed to taste like this, and as you move up and you realize that it's not, you get turned off by the ones that are good. And this is why I see people drinking stuff like Miami or even Freak Show. Terrible wines. Stay away from those. Those aren't real wines. They're lying to you. When I was just starting out, I found that Cabernet Sauvignon was really my go-to. I liked a nice red, and I like to relax at night after work. And a red really was kind of the beacon for that. And Cabernet Sauvignon is the world's most popular wine at the moment. And we know this because of how many grapevines are actually grown of this particular grape. Now, if you're like my mom, reds give you a headache, and there's a scientific reason for that. And we're not going to get into it in this video, but it does. It is the case. With some of the bold red wines, they will give you a headache, which is a shame because I really enjoy a red, and it's hard to be able to share that sometimes. But there's nothing wrong with a white. Now, my mom really liked Riesling because of sweet stuff. And one thing that I want to stress in this video as well is that once you find a wine, don't get stuck in the rut of just trying that grape. It's great to explore the grape, but don't just stick with that grape. For every bottle of Cabernet that I buy, I will buy another grape that I haven't had or another producer I haven't had of something completely different. So I'll buy a bottle of Cab and then I'll get a Zinfandel, or maybe I'll get a Pinot Noir. And it's just because you want to be able to explore more. Now, my mom really thought that Riesling was her only go-to. That was her wine. And I was able to turn her on to some grapes that she's never even heard of. Most notably, one that even I absolutely fell in love with and couldn't believe when I first tasted it was one called Niagara. And that is an exceptional experience. It is an experience unlike anything else. I cannot describe it as anything other than it feels like I'm 5-6 years old picking berries off the fresh vine, frolicking in a meadow. Like when I taste that wine, that is what I envision. If you're like me, I get most of my stuff from my local Kroger store, it's hard to find wine sometimes, but always experiment, always look around. There's always something new to try and something new to taste. But the trick of it is to have fun with your bottle of wine. When you get the bottle of wine, don't worry too much about what the producer says you're supposed to be tasting, because it's all subjective. Whatever that says on there, disregard it. After you've tasted the wine and you've got to know the wine for yourself, you can go ahead and try and hunt for those things like I try to do and try and pick those out. But most of the time, it's a very personal experience. Another thing that I do recommend, though, is getting the app Vivino on the Google Play Store or your Apple device. This is basically the social media of the wine world. You can buy wine, you can rate wine, you can learn about wine, and it's a great way of really being able to kind of discover maybe why it is you like that particular style of grape, and you can rate the wine and you can follow other people and look at their reviews and figure out what you should taste. It's great because you can also see what grapes are actually in here, because just because this is labeled Cabernet does not mean that it's 100% Cabernet. Here in America, I think it's only like 75% or maybe something like that needs to be that grape for it to be called that. So it's a good way of being able to really pick apart the wine. And as you rate more and more wines, Vivino does a great job of recommending other wines. We're not necessarily recommending, but if you look at another wine, it'll give you a percentage chance that you're gonna like that wine, and that's a great way of going. At the end of the day, just being able to take the time, at least on your first glass, to just get to know that wine is going to really help you enjoy wines regardless of the price range. I have found $10 bottles of wine that I have been able to thoroughly enjoy and recommend to others because I've been able to just take that time. Every now and then, take the time to really get to know a bottle of wine, especially if it's one that you picked up that you're really excited about, you've heard about, or maybe you just like the label. But just get to know the bottle of wine. Let the wine get to know you, and get to know it. So I hope you learned something new. When it comes down to wine, just take the time, at least on the first glass, to just get to know that wine and really dissect it. For me, getting into wine was simply just because I was fascinated with the history of wine and how wine was made, and now I just love every aspect of wine. I've been buying books on wine, I buy a lot of wine, I bought a wine fridge. So if you would like to see more videos on wine, I am happy to talk more about it. But in the comments down below, let me know about your wine experience. Do you have a favorite grape? Do you have a favorite bottle? Do you have a ritual, so to speak, on your first glass of wine? How do you enjoy it? I'm the Relaxing Shadow, and cheers. See you again very soon. Oh, I almost forgot. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like. It's always a big boost to the morale. And if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the video when I get around to making them every few months. Cheers.